Thank you for coming out. This is our third faculty forum where we typically goes, where we present some ideas and have an opportunity to address questions and get reactions from the faculty. I found this to be, for me personally, a helpful format to get out sort of big issues for our university. So this will follow a similar format. We're going to present some information to you. It won't take up the whole time. We'll take up maybe 20 minutes or so to present some information, and then we're going to open it up for discussion. The idea again is to for us to be gathering information as we move forward in these areas. I'm looking over at Robin because I'm going to say some things and she can nod her head if they're true. I think they are. But the prior ones of these, we've set up websites. We've set up websites. For example, if you go to the Provost website, you can click on Academic Affairs Faculty Forum, and then there's a link with the date and the topic for each of the forums we've had. If you're bored one evening and want to watch a whole video of the last forums, you can do that. It's all going to be posted on there. And we'll have one about this one as well. You may notice the gentleman with the camera. We're recording these, and again, the purpose of that is that we realize we can't reach out to the entire faculty, so we're going to put it up on the web. It's on YouTube, and put the link there on our site. And our site is set up so that people can give input.
It will be.
It will be.
Yeah.
Our site will be set up. So if there are questions that came out today that you didn't think got answered or that you thought of after you left, go ahead and send in. Go to the website and click and send in. Or if that doesn't, if you don't want to do that, just send me an email. But we are setting this up for people to continue the conversation, and for those who couldn't be here today, to also participate in the conversation. So on the website you'll find the slides that you'll see today, as well as a link to the video and a spot for gathering input. So today's topics are research and graduate education at the university. In my time here, these are both areas that have really grown dramatically. I think as a research institution, we've really taken some significant steps forward. We're bringing in much more grant money than we did a decade or more ago, and we want to continue to improve in that area. In graduate education, particularly over the last, I'd say 8 years or so, we've really, I think, made some important advances, and we want to keep those moving forward. But as everything, the one constant here at the University of Maine is change, and we're experiencing change in a variety of ways. You may or may not be aware that we're facing some budgetary challenges, and those suggest that we need to be thinking differently and making sure we're using all our resources very wisely, without losing sight of our mission and our missions, I guess I should say. In this case, looking focused attention on our role as a research, as the research university in the state of Maine and the institution of graduate education. So, in terms of change, there have been some personnel changes. So, after many years, Mike Eckhart retired. We moved in, and now we have Professor Carol Kim as our Vice President for Research. Whenever there's change like that, it's an opportunity to examine the way we've done business and to think about how to move things forward. And I will publicly say that Carol Kim has done a fantastic job there, taking the time to meet with constituent groups, the research center directors, the faculty senate, the URC, gathering information, thinking through what are we doing well and what do we need to do to continue to advance or move up to the next level as a research university. She's also done a 360 evaluation of the Office of Research and has some ideas about the way we can move forward in our research operations. And I think you all know that after 9 years of stellar service, Dan Sandweiss has decided to return to be a full-time faculty member in anthropology in the Climate Change Institute. And under Dan's direction, the graduate school has really made remarkable advances. But when there's a vacancy like that, it does, again, create opportunities for us to rethink the way we're organized and how we might do things differently. So, today we're going to present some ideas. These are our thinking at this point in time. I will say we didn't come up with them this morning. These are conversations that Carol and I have been having for a long time. Really, I think since last fall, back and forth, looking at data, thinking about things in different ways. We brought in other folks as part of the conversation. So today, what we'd like to do is present some of the ideas about how we see moving forward, both in research and graduate education, and then have an opportunity to hear from you what your reaction is to these ideas, what questions do they generate that we can either try to address or we can tinker with the way we're thinking about moving forward. So, my responsibilities are relatively light today compared to the prior forms, because I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Kim, who will talk you through our organization, or our proposal organization.
Okay.
Carol?
Thank you, Jeff. Whoa, I hadn't turned around for a while. It's filled up. So many of you know me as the Vice President for Research, or getting to know me in this capacity. I'm not sure if all of you know me in my capacity as a researcher and a professor of microbiology in the Department of Molecular and Biomedical Sciences. So research and graduate education has been central to the work that I've done here, my career here at University of Maine. On the research side and graduate education side, I've, through my lab, trained more than 120 undergraduates, half a dozen high school and junior high students, more than 30 graduate students, 20 of those trained in my lab for their master's and doctoral work. And the research and graduate education really has been central. Without that piece, my career here would not, I wouldn't have had much of a career here, right? So, while I was preparing for this presentation, I was also, in parallel, trying to organize college tours for my high school age son. He's a junior. And many of you probably relate to this or will relate to this. And we're reviewing all the different schools, trying to arrange these tours. And it's interesting what you learn. I learned a lot. Connor happens to be really interested in laboratory science and probably biology, biomedical sciences, although he tried to deny it for as long as possible. He wants to do something similar to what I did and what my husband did. But he's really interested in finding a college or a university that has undergraduate research opportunities. And although there are some small private schools that offer an excellent education, the research opportunities are more limited. And even with the larger land-grant universities that we're looking at, so UConn, URI, for instance, they do have undergraduate research opportunities, but it's a little different. Here at University of Maine, all the students are required to complete a capstone experience, required to do scholarship and research before they can graduate. So it's a little different than trying to go out there and find those opportunities on your own. And I think that he's also seeing this, and I certainly see this, as this hands-on research experience as an undergrad will provide for him a competitive edge for graduate school, for jobs, professional school, whatever he decides in the end. I'll give you an example of not my son, but a student I had in the lab, Sarah. So Sarah was a first generation in her family to go to college. She was working in my laboratory as an undergraduate, and in her junior year, I brought her into my office and asked, okay, so Sarah, what do you want to do when you're done? You're more than halfway through, what are you thinking about? And she said, well, ever since I was a little kid, I really thought I wanted to go to medical school, but I could never do that. I'm like, why? You have a fantastic GPA, you're a hard worker, you're a good thinker, you're a good person. Why not? This is where your interests are. Okay, so she thought about it a little bit. And she decided to take a break from undergrad before she decided what to do next, and took a job as a technician at Children's Hospital in Boston. And it happened that this laboratory, or this department, was hiring 4 new faculty. They were sharing one large laboratory, and each of the new investigators was going to hire a technician. And so Sarah called me very nervous. What am I'm, the other technicians, they're from BU and Tufts, and I'm never going to be able to compete. And I said, don't worry about it. And she called me 2 weeks later, a week into her job, and she says, wow, yeah, we were all on the same playing field in terms of the theoretical, the knowledge from the classroom. But I was the only one that could pick up a pipette and start working immediately. I was the only one that could design an experiment and start working. Okay? That gave her a tremendous amount of confidence. She was great. And now she's the chief of pediatrics at a hospital in Denver. So, and the thing is, that's one story from my lab. I have a number of them, and I know each of you have stories just like that about your students. And so, as I talk about the research and graduate education, the mission here at the University of Maine, I want you to think about those stories. And we need to collect those stories too. Okay. So in accordance with the Blue Sky project, the VPR's office will enhance our research capacity and output as measured in the core areas of research expenditures and private foundation funding. Okay. And just to give everyone kind of a snapshot where we are right now, and this is coming from the first impact report from the Blue Sky Plan. The cumulative research awards over the past 3-4 years, research centers, $162.7 million, NSFA, $55 million, EPSCoR programs, $23.4 million, College of Engineering, $18 million, Cooperative Extension, $17.6, College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, $12.4, and Education, $12.1. Okay, so we're doing pretty well. And in terms of our current status for total awards coming in, it's been pretty steady over the past 10, 12 years, with a blip here at 2009, 2010, and that's because of recovery funds, the ERA funds coming to the university, and bonds. So that makes up this blip that we see here. But we've been pretty consistent with the dollar amounts of the awards coming in over this time period. In 2013, UMaine faculty and staff submitted 523 proposals, 328 were awarded, and these proposals involved 327 faculty and staff and 56 departments. I think that's a very impressive number. And when you look over the past 10 years in terms of our success rate, we have a success rate of 60%, which I think is really impressive. So over this past 10 years, though, there has been a decline in the number of proposals that have been submitted. So if we maintain this quality and have the success of 60% success rate, that follows that if we can submit more proposals, we should be able to be more successful with the awards coming into the university. Total expenditures, $85 million for 2013. And then the calculated return on investment was 5 for 2013, which has been about the average for the past 10 years. Okay. As Jeff mentioned, in reviewing what my office is supposed to be doing, and in terms of advancing and supporting research and scholarship, I've worked with several faculty groups, including the Faculty Senate and specifically the Research and Scholarship Committee. The VPR's office has a Blue Sky Advisory Committee, which is made up of faculty members from each of the colleges, and the University Research Council. I wanted to make this a data-driven process, and so we analyzed the 2012 URC strategic plan And also, Faculty Senate conducted a survey a few years ago, which is great. A lot of participation. I think more than 100 faculty participated in that survey. So these two documents in particular provide a lot of information. And so what we really wanted to do is, there were lots of great ideas to support research from these documents, but what I wanted to find were those support mechanisms that would affect as many faculty as possible. So rather than choosing those supports for individual units or investigators or even colleges, try to identify those support mechanisms that would be as far-reaching as possible. So to that end, we have a few ideas. Grant consultants really was number one, seemed like, from the analysis. And these grant consultants, their responsibility would be to identify funding opportunities, develop proposal templates. And actually, if we have the funds for these grant consultants, I'd love to have a grant consultant specifically for education or for DOE or for NSF, and then foundation work. But they would be assisting with budget construction and polishing grants and working very closely with the pre-awards section of ORSP. Another idea was to have these people conduct or assemble these, organize these grant writing workshops for new and mid-career faculty. Okay. Another idea was release time for faculty, to allow faculty the time away from teaching to write and submit proposals. Another are graduate students. So many of you probably feel the same way. Graduate students are research multipliers. And so if we can support these students, hopefully we'll have more research productivity. So funding pilot projects, another way to support faculty across campus. I would like to see this as interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary projects, bringing together people from CLES, engineering, NSFA, education, et cetera, right? And then a lot of discussion about improving and measuring the customer satisfaction around ORSP. And so the first step to that is to review ORSP, and we're working with NCURA, which I have to look at my notes because National Council of University Research Administrators. And so they have a mechanism in which you can ask them to come and review your research office, ORSP office, for just to see how well that office is run and provide the review and suggestions. Okay. So what we're hoping is that with these support mechanisms, we can increase our total expenditure targets from 84 million in 2013 to 115 million by 2016, which is a 35% increase, and by 2018 to 130 million, which translates into a 53% increase in total expenditures. And again, this is contingent on the support that we receive through these mechanisms. Okay. So I'm going to switch gears here and talk a little bit about graduate education. Okay, again, I have a deep commitment to graduate education. It's in line with, and I think intimately linked to, research and research productivity on campus. So a little bit of blue sky speak here. University of Maine aspires to be the most distinctively student-centered and community-engaged of the American research universities. And through Pathway 4, strengthening the UMaine undergraduate and graduate student experience. Okay, so from the Blue Sky Plan, we needed to review the research office, and now we're discussing reviewing the graduate office, or the graduate school, and the needs of the graduate school. So as Jeff mentioned, we have an excellent dean in Dan Sanwise stepping down from his position, of his leadership position in the graduate school. And I just want to take a few minutes to just kind of sing Dan's praises. I had the pleasure of working very closely with him as the Graduate School of Biomedical Science and Engineering was being developed, and he was great. He was wonderful to work with. I learned a lot from him. Other accomplishments include, and this is not an exhaustive list, but some of the highlights. He increased the number of doctoral degrees by 20% in his time as the dean. He oversaw not only the development of GSBSE, but also the School of Policy and International Affairs, or SPIA. And he also oversaw the creation of the Integral Graduate Center at Stoddard. Okay, just a few of the highlights of his great leadership at the graduate school. So unfortunately, Dan has decided to step down, go back to the faculty in anthropology, and so there's a leadership need. We've examined past organizational structures of the graduate school and investigated organizations of peer institutions, but we want to maintain the goal of visibility. We want to maintain the visibility of the graduate school, maintain the outstanding quality of the graduate school, and we also want to maintain, as we're thinking about research office restructuring and the graduate school restructuring, to focus on both the doctoral and the master's degrees. And one of those ways is through some of the professional programs that have been developed over the years. Okay, so where we currently stand, the Office of the Vice President for Research, I have assistants here, a special assistant, Amy Clark is here in the audience, Erica Kennedy, administrative specialist, many of you have talked to her on the phone, scheduling and leaving phone messages, and I have an accounts specialist in Jen Baker, and she has a lot of history, and she's fantastic with the MEIF budgets and all the intricacies of those funds. And then I have 3 offices that report to my office, ORSP, the EPSCoR Office, and compliance, and that's Gail Jones, if you don't know. The research office, the research centers also report, a number of them report to my office as well. The graduate school includes the dean of the graduate school, the associate dean, Scott Delcourt, who's sitting right here, and then a number of administrative support staff for the graduate school. These red boxes are designating the administrative people in these 2 offices. Okay. So, as we analyze the needs of both the research office and the graduate school, several things come up. From learning a lot from the signature and emerging area process, I learned a ton from reading the proposals, the pre-proposals. And one of the things that I thought was great was, as I mentioned before, my interest in interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. That was one of the criteria for whether you are designated, you could be designated as a signature or emerging program. The EPSCoR Office, it's currently, the structure has a director that reports to the VPR. And if you look at the structures of other EPSCoR states, that structure is not quite parallel. And it has not major problems, but caused some problems with some of the collaborative projects we have with other EPSCoR states. And so having a faculty liaison would be wonderful to try to bridge this so it will support and hopefully encourage more of these collaborative projects and also collaborations across states with other EPSCoR states. And one of the things people ask me, so what has surprised you most in this position? So I've been on campus almost 16 years on this campus. And I thought I had a pretty good idea of the research that's being conducted on this campus. And I was very proud of the fact that, wow, we do really great research. I had no idea. So coming into this office, I've just been struck by how many fantastic research groups we have on this campus that I had no idea. So if I don't know, when I've been on this campus for 15, 16 years, no one across the state of Maine is going to know. So Maine, the state of Maine, citizens of Maine, when they think about research at the University of Maine, they might be able to identify one or two people, one or two research groups. But they have no idea about the breadth of the research that's being conducted and the excellent research that's being conducted on this campus. Okay, so we have to be better about communicating the research and scholarship successes at the University of Maine. We can do this through a website and more communication with the Office of Innovation and Economic Development. That's through Jake's office, and we're working very closely together. But we have to do something. I don't think this is unique. I'm not the first person to think about this, right? To think, well, we have to communicate our successes better. But it's a constant problem. We have to figure out a way to communicate better with our stakeholders, with the legislature, with the citizens of Maine. Okay, so what do I have next? So one way to potentially support these needs is to develop this Associate Vice President for Research position. Okay, a position that's not, it's a position that has been on this campus before as an administrative structure. So as a draft plan, an idea that we've been batting around is to have the graduate school reporting to the Vice President for Research. And this Vice President, Associate Vice President for Research and Graduate Studies would work in parallel with the Associate Dean of the Graduate School, again, this is Scott Delcourt, to work, so this AVPR, working at the EPSCoR Office and the Graduate School, and working very closely with Scott Delcourt to support the Graduate School, and delineation being the Associate VPR would be in charge of any faculty-associated issues at the graduate school, would be in charge of faculty reappointment for the graduate school, curriculum committee, chair, etc. The Associate Dean also would be working very closely with the Vice President for Enrollment Management, that's Jimmy Jung, and through the Director of the Graduate Enrollment Management. Okay? And so as we try to move forward and improve graduate enrollment, we feel that this structure would support our mission, our goals. Okay. So in summary, we've assessed the effectiveness of the VPR office to support and expand research here on campus. We've assessed the strengths and the needs, analyzed potential structural reorganization of the graduate school and the VPR's office, and developed a model that supports and strengthens the research and graduate missions on campus. At least that's what we were aiming for. So it's been very quiet in the room. I think with that, I'd be happy to take questions. I think Jeff is going to join me to field questions.
What do you think?
I'll start off because mainly I'm still just trying to wrap my head around. Carol, can you talk a little more directly how this new structure gets at specific weaknesses or adds specific strengths? What are the particular things that this new structural model will give us that we don't have now?
So the current structure is that and please jump in. The current structure is that the graduate school reports to the provost's office. And that's a fine structure. I think, though, that having the research office and the graduate office more intimately linked will strengthen both the graduate school and the research missions. Again, as we assess what we have for research or the additional support, one of those was graduate students. And I think they're key to expanding research on campus.
I'd say that, and then the other things, I think one thing that Carol didn't mention, this position is a new position, we don't have that now. That's funding that's going to come from a position vacated in enrollment management. And so one of our goals is to grow enrollment at the graduate level. So if you look at our data, we've been talking about this, Friday in particular, we talked about the growth in enrollment at the university and that our financial model is to grow enrollment. Graduate enrollment has actually decreased over the last few years. So we want to look and put energy into graduate enrollment. And so there would be someone coming over from enrollment management focused on graduate enrollment. And how do we generate more interest, more applications, and attract people to graduate education. So that's different on the graduate side. And I think the other pieces, again, Carol commented on, but I think the additional involvement of the Associate Vice President for Research and Graduate Study, that connection, that person with the EPSCoR Office, we're hoping will help to facilitate more proposals and more involvement with faculty through EPSCoR.
So the reporting structure between these two positions, what is it? It looks like you've got two separate reporting lines from the graduate school through these two, and then two separate lines up to the VPR's position. Is there some kind of hierarchy between these two?
These two? No.
No, they're designed to be equal. It was hard to get it all on one page. They're supposed to be next to each other, reporting up to Carol. Ed?
One of the issues that Carol brought up was the communication. Where does the communications fit in? Duck around to avoid that camera. Where does communications aspect fit into this structure?
That would be under the Associate VPR's position to help with. So, as we think about how we would draft a job description, a position description, that would be a key component. So someone who has experience with communications and has ideas about how to get the word out. Yes.
So wouldn't you want to have a dotted line to marketing and communications? What do we call that now? Marketing.
Yes, that's a great idea.
John Mann.
It's interesting that if you take the green lines away, this is the arrangement in the Vice President Research Office when I was provost. And we did away with the Associate Vice President Research and Graduate Studies for a variety of reasons. And I'm not sure why suddenly that has risen up. But getting back to research from it, I looked at the OSRP reports and some of the other data, and this is just historical stuff, so Carol, you're innocent hands on this, so you should understand that. But between fiscal 9 and fiscal 13, we've seen a 23% drop in proposals, a 46% drop in the amount of money requested, a 24% drop in awards, and a 41% drop in money awarded. How is this going to help improve that?
Wow. Thank you for your very little question. This is a major issue, John. I think it is, and I've been thinking about it quite a bit. I'm familiar with those statistics, and I think many issues are interlinked, right? So our faculty are teaching more. That inhibits them from writing and submitting proposals. The federal funding atmosphere, it's terrible. Right? So I'm most familiar with NIH, single-digit success rate. And that's for established investigators. So as you're a new investigator, it's almost impossible. It's very difficult. I think that one of the advantages that we have is that we already are quite good at working as interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary teams, and to leverage that and work even more together and highlight and support these interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary efforts. So
Yeah, I'll jump in too. I mean, I think the factors that Carol outlined in discussing with the faculty, looking at survey results, asking people what they need. The number one thing was the grant consultants. That's not going to solve all these issues, but what we're going to try to do is help the faculty, provide them the support they need to be able to be more competitive, get more grants out. I mean, I think you Carol touched on them, but you know, in that time period you talked about, our faculty has gotten smaller. There was a recession, or it was during the recession. The government shut down for a while. It's more competitive to get grants, and so it's a tougher challenge. We need to bring in more support from the faculty who are here to do it, and I think, you know, some of the ways that we want to do that. We're looking at a couple of other ways to try to bring resources in. One is working with Vice President Waldron to say, okay, I mentioned on Friday that these grant consultants are a pilot. She's, you know, moving the money over. It's not base funded yet. But we want to show that there's return on that investment. If we can return on investment, then we can grow it. The other way we're trying to move investment is that through the University of Maine system, we're going after, if you will, funds that they want to reinvest in the research enterprise. And we've made a proposal about how to invest it here to improve our research infrastructure. So we're trying to address exactly what you're talking about. Nick?
Yeah, but it's important to benchmark these numbers too. A couple years ago, we were about 10% above the average for top 100 research universities in per capita funding for research, external grants. At the same time, we just went through a budget exercise where we lost 15 faculty. Any expectation that we're going to see this, whatever the numbers were, 24, 36, choose your number, increase in external funding, fundamentally misunderstands the fact that we're losing faculty. We're transferring faculty positions to instructors who are 100% teaching who have no research activity. And depending on where you are in the university, we're seeing dramatic increases in our teaching load. You know, there's a lot of good things in the world. We have to, you know, the idea of economics is choosing what good things we can do. I guess my specific question then is, how much of the money that currently supports graduate education, particularly in the research-intensive areas, is going to be transferred to these professional programs and under the Vice President for Enrollment Management as a strategic effort to have professional degrees instead of supporting the dissertation fellowships?
I mean, our plan is not to shift funds over from the areas that are more research intensive into the professional programs. I mean, we're looking at, as I said, we brought in a resource from Enrollment Management over to the graduate school to try to grow the enrollment, and we're trying to do this in a way that we're not, in fact, shifting areas over. We've identified that the reality is there are areas on this campus where there is capacity at the graduate level, particularly in the professional areas, where we could grow enrollment without new investments. We're trying to take the enrollment management and help us to target our advertising and enrollment efforts to direct toward those programs. So things aren't all you know, equal. I know they're bursting at the seams in some areas, and we're at or beyond capacity. But the reality is there are areas where we do have capacity to grow enrollment, and our early efforts are going to be to target enrollment there. And I just want to make a quick comment about what you said earlier. But you're of course absolutely right that you can only do a certain number of good things, and we're in the process, and I guess it's an ongoing process of evaluating that annually. But I don't think you know, we have a strategic plan to move resources out of our research enterprise and into instruction. We do need to support instruction, and we do need to support research, and we're trying to balance these competing needs. Marie.
One of the things that I thought was a great idea was this communication aspect, but not simply communication throughout the state of Maine or to our constituents, but that looking at what NIH and other funders are doing in terms of the investigator-initiated research, where the principal investigator comes from a particular institution and has collaborators within that institution. I'm seeing much more productivity in working with that kind of consolidation of funding that's occurring through institutes and large medical schools and universities. And our research program hooking on to those has resulted in the best that we've seen in a long time and promises for the future. So I think one of the angles that we haven't thought about really effectively is taking our extreme talent and linking it to groups that are already well institutionally padded against the vagaries of the study section, which for the individual investigator, coming from an institution that doesn't have a medical school, for example, or other kinds of infrastructure, really does make us at a disadvantage where our talent is strong enough. So I think like that kind of thing is something that everybody probably just hasn't thought through as they write their research proposals, but are actually surprisingly easy to do. And I was surprised at how open the big places are to needing help. So that was just a thought. Yeah, yeah.
About 30 years ago, I'm looking at the top box here, and that was the situation, wasn't it? Am I correct that the vice president for research was also the dean of the graduate school?
We have had that iteration here before, yeah.
And so in a sense, we're returning to an older organizational position. But I suppose my question is, how does that, since you said you examined past organizational models, practices, how does that model compare with what we had 30, 25 years ago? Is it far more top-heavy? Is it just about the same?
No, I mean, if you, so one thing that the reason I'm using these red boxes around these positions is if you notice the current organization is that there is the VPR, and then in the graduate school there's the dean and the associate dean, so 3 red boxes. In this draft for a reorganization also have 3 boxes, so that the dean of the graduate school would move to the VPR, and then we have an associate VPR and the associate dean. So total, it's the same number of administrative
True, but
FTEs.
we other units have had to diminish the size for monetary reasons, and so that's why I was asking if you have any idea of how that model compares with that point in time when the vice president for research was also the dean of the school.
Trevor, I mean, compared to 35 years ago, I'm not sure we have those things. I mean, we did look back, I mean, John mentioned we had this organization previously, or our variation of this. I believe actually, well, I don't want to misspeak, I think this is essentially the same size with respect to administrative structure as we had back then. Maybe John, I don't know, do you recall, John Mann, is there any other administrative boxes here about the same? I mean, part of it, you know, it's sort of everything is old is new again. But part of it is that the reality is, you know, a box is a box on an organizational chart, but decisions are made for a variety of reasons in institutions. Some of them have to do with the strength and skills of the people who occupy the boxes. And I think today, what we're doing is looking at the makeup of what we have, and we feel that this is a good model. And again, I'll you know, pander to my colleague here. We have someone who's our vice president for research who's been the director of a graduate program. She's got that experience and that skill and in her background, so we felt it's a good use of the current personnel that we have. Mike.
Mike Kinnison, School of Biology and Ecology, and current IACUC chair, and that relates a little bit to my question at the moment, is of the pinch points on this for growth, as you're projecting this increase in number of research grants coming to campus, 53% increase on that longer timeline, seems like one of our real limiting factors is in that compliance area.
Yes.
Right now. We have a somewhat strained system already with a 4+ hour IACUC meeting a week or so ago.
Yes.
So getting and applying for more grants will be important, but the back end on that in terms of moving the grants through the system and ensuring that we can bring them on campus is going to be part of that. Is there some vision for review on that compliance side as well as the ORSP side to ensure that it's going to be able to support that kind of growth?
Not so much review, but definitely, that's a great point, and I see that we would need support on the compliance end as well. There are some discussions right now about moving or reorganizing the ORSP office to help support Gale and some of those efforts, and maybe through some restructuring support the compliance and some of the other roles that the ORSP is responsible for. So, but yes, it's a very good point, and something that we are aware that we need to, for all of, all of the support staff for research, we will need eventually more support.
I mean, that's the tension, right? We're underfunded everywhere, and so then you're trying to figure out where do you put it. And it's a great point. We have to look at, if we do in fact succeed in growing, what do we have to come in the back end to make sure
Yes.
we put it in there. So, that's the constant challenge. Take it down.
Mary Ellen Kamari from the School of Food and Agriculture. I'd like to shift the discussion a little bit to the students. And right now, out-of-state students are paying roughly 3 times the tuition of Maine residents. And I feel we're losing some really competitive candidates because of the tuition difference when we don't have tuition scholarships to give them. Is there going to be a discussion about how to increase enrollments by potentially reducing, doing an economic analysis, the reduction of out-of-state tuition to increase numbers?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that will be part of what we one of the factors that we look at. It's this tough balancing act, right? The reality is we want to secure as much income as we possibly can, and where do you find that tipping point? I guess I hear from you that you feel like we maybe have overstepped the tipping point. The short answer is yes. We're going to be looking at that, particularly as we have a focus on growing enrollment in our professional programs, and those are usually ones where the students are paying the tuition, and we'll be collecting data as we go. And if we're finding we're getting lots of applicants and no one coming, or we're finding that at the application time they're saying no because you're too expensive, we're going to have to revisit it. One of the things we're doing, it wasn't on there, but again, as a one-time experiment, we're going to outsource the sort of recruitment part of into the professional programs. There's a company that we were going to outsource this again to trial to see whether they can generate more applications for us, and then we'll see what happens. We'll be collecting the data on that as we go. And it is a good point. We were at Janet's presentation on Friday, so she had the bars up, and whereas we are much lower than everyone else with respect to in-state tuition, our peer institutions throughout New England, we're now bumping up. We got UMass by $5. We're $5 less expensive, but everywhere else we're okay.
Carol, I really like the way you started a presentation by telling me a story. So let me tell you a story and then lead into the question, right? So School of Marine Sciences has conducted an undergraduate survey recently. 90% of our graduates have jobs. 50% of the graduates have gone to graduate school or in the graduate school. One of the secrets for this increase in enrollment in the marine sciences is really the hands-on field and lab-based education. Most importantly, doing research with a faculty.
Yes.
So just to start the story, one of our undergraduates, Tom Louis, worked with Emmanuel since he's a sophomore year, and developed this app called Hydrocolor, right? And you take 3 images, the sky and a board, any green color board, and water, and it will tell you the water quality of your lake or the ocean, and the turbidity, chlorophyll, etc. You can buy this on the Apple App Store for $3.99. So this morning, there's a 400+ lake association reach out to them, called for a meeting. So you can imagine the summer when you go on the boat and here in the Lake of Maine, buy this app, please, all right, so support that. The reason is really this, the School of Marine Sciences is kind of unique situation, has a strong research activity as well as undergraduate curriculum. So my question to you is, how you can encourage and reward all the research institutes and the centers here on campus, there's a dozen of them, to embrace this undergraduate research experience?
Well, I don't think that'll be a very hard job. I think that most of the research centers, the departments, the colleges, all embrace that. I mean, I think that's part of, so for me to encourage undergraduate research and to talk about it, I think I'm preaching to the choir. I mean, I think that all of you are working with undergraduates as well as graduate students in your research and scholarship already. I really, you know, I don't think it's a hard sell for this group or anyone on campus. I think in terms of the support, yes, I'd love to have more support for the undergraduates so that they have this value added to their undergraduate experience. And just as I mentioned before, to be more to be more competitive for graduate schools, professional schools, jobs, right? So how to do that, how to get that support, and how to reward, as you state, I'm not exactly sure, but I think that as we increase the research capacity on campus, increase the number of awards coming in, to have more support for our undergraduates. Because the other thing is, many of our undergraduates, they must work during the summer, right? They need to make money for the coming fall. And so if we can support more of our undergraduates with internships on campus, that would be great. So.
As you're aware, probably, that one of the preview grants that the president gave was for the Center for Undergraduate Research in LA. Betty has done, I think, a fantastic job in running that. We're moving, the next year will be year 3. But Ali has been working with the budget to be able to carry more money forward into year 4. But he's also been thinking and got some proposals about how to use the money to leverage other money. So how to work and go to the research centers and make a deal. Say, look, we can provide this much, you can provide that much, to create more opportunities for our undergraduate students. And I do think it's a very important part of what we offer and what's clearly distinctive about getting your degree at the University of Maine as compared to anywhere else in the state of Maine. Liam.
So I worry a little bit about the ongoing nature of the university as a comprehensive research university, and I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the place of non-grant funded research and graduate education.
So I think as I was outlining my thoughts and my analyses, I wanted to make sure that I was including scholarship. That scholarship is very important. One of the things that in consultation with the different groups... So the
distinction you draw is research is funded and scholarship is not?
No, because there's research that is not funded as well. Collaboration, students that are supported, students who are in labs, either, so for an example, an undergraduate fulfilling their capstone, they're doing research. It's not necessarily funded, but it's working to, or contributing to publications maybe, or whatever that faculty member is focused on. I think that, so one example of trying to support some of the scholarship and research that's not as associated with obtaining funding. Right? So for instance, the faculty research funds, and we asked that faculty who were in MEIF areas to consider partnering with non-MEIF faculty to put in joint grants. One of the restrictions for those faculty research funds, as you know, is that faculty from non-MEIF areas are preferred or given preference, and to develop some more of these interdisciplinary groups and collaboratives to encourage MEIF and non-MEIF faculty to collaborate and put forward joint grants.
Yeah, I slightly inconsistent but different angle on this. And part of it, I mean, is the world is changing and higher ed is changing. And I think part of the challenge is to look at the areas like the humanities and the arts that have not been getting grant support, and for us to figure out how to help them to do that, because the reality is there are grants out there, private foundations, federal grants for the arts and humanities. They're not nearly at the level dollar amount, but they are available. So I think there's got to be, or I'd like to see, a shift in culture where people in the humanities are. That's more the mindset. And it may again be a $30,000 grant to subvent the development of a book. That's great. That's meaningful for someone in the humanities. So I think looking at helping with a couple of things, being better identifying where those sources are, helping our faculty to develop those skills, I would say, in thinking about and pursuing that. I think another piece of it, and again, I know you're well aware of this, but I'll use an opportunity to talk in front of everyone else about it, is generating our own funds. So we created the Humanities Initiative and developing a Humanities Center here at the University of Maine. We're at about $500,000 of endowment. We have a goal of $1.6 million endowment. I'm pretty confident we're going to get there. That'll kick out, not big money, but that will kick out money, and as you know, Liam, part of that money is designated to support scholarship in the humanities. So I think we have to be creative in thinking about how to bring support for our faculty who don't, who aren't going to be, there just aren't the number of sources available, while there are some sources. And then the other piece I would say is around, I think, touching on the point Carol made around collaboration and looking at things in teams. And again, in areas that hadn't traditionally been thought about in terms of research teams, folks in history, in philosophy and English, who could contribute to a larger team in pursuing more larger scale grants. So I think it's got to be all those pieces. But as you know, I am also concerned about that. I don't want us to lose track of scholarship that is not, that isn't only where the large federal agencies are targeting funds.
I was wondering about, you said on the research, for the thinking about this plan, you looked at peer institutions. I'm curious who you consider our peer research institutions.
So, University of, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Wyoming or Montana, Wyoming, and then I always get the North and South Dakotas mixed up.
South Dakota.
So, as our peer institutions.
Let me get Susan first. Susan.
One question I have, and perhaps it's related to what Liam just asked about, is indirect funds and where those go. I'm used to a model at a lot of public research universities where a percentage go back into funding the libraries, for example. You need a strong library to do research. A percentage go back into the graduate school because you need graduate students to do research. Where do ours go? And
Great question.
How do those contribute to these missions?
Great question, and I want everybody to know this now. So they all go back centrally. So the VPR's office does not see any of the indirect cost return. The indirects never come to my office. There have been times, probably 8-10 years ago, where the president did return some of the indirect funds to individual investigators, and I think the chairs and deans might have also had monies returned to them. I would love to have those discussions and talk about how to distribute those indirect cost returns. Yes? Yes.
I'll just say, your Vice President for Research has been asking that question of our Vice President for Administration and Finance. And again, it's been, I mean, you'll know, and everyone around here knows, it's not a new issue. We're pushing at it. We recognize we are a minority among research universities that people can't answer that question. You're asked the question, what's your formula? It's just say goodbye. Since you already
on this topic,
go ahead.
it's not really a question, but if I remember correctly, it was last year on University Research Council, a lot of time was spent on this long-standing issue, and I thought by the end of the year some kind of agreement had been struck involving Mike Eckert's office at that time and Janet Waldron's office.
So there wasn't a formal agreement, but there were discussions and they were progressing. And I think change of leadership and also our current budget situation, they've been stalled but not forgotten, and we will continue to discuss this, I promise.
Because there were numbers, and it wasn't.
Yes.
It was more than a concept. Yeah.
Yes.
John Mann in the back.
But he's correct, by the way, so I was on the University Research Council. The other thing that really bothers me about our institution is, and I don't know where it fits in any of this stuff, I spent 23 years at Boston University where tens of millions of dollars came into the institution from patents, royalties, and other things. Where's that revenue? Where's that revenue from all of our centers that are supposed to be creating new things and delivering new things? Where is that source of funding?
Well, we haven't had with us today.
Offshore bank account.
It's about $100 million is where the institution I got every year got from
We're not nearly at that level.
We're not.
Do you want to
We're
make some
at
comments about that?
200,000, and mostly it goes to, it is distributed according to formula back to the centers and faculty who help generate it.
So did you hear that,
And
John?
then-
It's about
and then it
$200,000 it was distributed.
Covers patenting costs as well, legal costs, so it's all put right back in.
Am I misspeaking if I said that this idea of developing a University of Maine Research Foundation is to create an infrastructure that will allow us to be more successful at not only creating patents, but creating mechanisms for getting the flow back onto campus? Alan?
So, one thing that it took me like a couple of decades really to finally understand was that the vast majority of graduate students at the University of Maine and probably at most other universities aren't involved in research. They're master's students in non-thesis master's programs. And, you know, again, as someone from a department and a field that doesn't really focus on non-thesis master's programs, you know, it took me many years on the grad board to start to understand what other people were talking about around the room. So, you know, and I always thought that the reason we moved away from a model like this one toward a model where those two streams were less mixed was really in recognition of the fact that most of our grad students don't contribute to the research mission. So I guess, you know, I think I'm really going back a little bit here to Owen's question, actually, that he opened with, is I'm looking at this scheme. I don't have a problem with it necessarily, but it has the same number of boxes as the existing scheme. It's not designed to achieve leanness or meanness or whatever. The vice president for research, who seems to have quite a lot on her plate, is now going to be asked to be the decider for the graduate school. You know, the box right below that, which I guess roughly corresponds to what we've been calling the dean of the graduate school, is now being asked to, you know, be thinking about research. And, you know, I wonder whether it really makes sense to be mixing these two streams that don't really mostly flow that closely together.
I don't agree that they don't flow close together. They are, I mean, because as you said, your area, many areas, they're completely linked together, right? Graduate education and research. We didn't have this other area, and again, by numbers, it is more of the graduate students here who are not involved in the research enterprise. I mean, you could, I mean, so we've gone back and forth on that. I think where this model creates new opportunities is, again, it does put more on Carol's plate, but it does have this associate vice president for research, and part of their job, again, is not only about communication, it's about trying to bring faculty groups together, to help them to be more competitive for the kind of collaborative grants I think Marie and others are talking about. That this person is part of that, his or her responsibilities will be, you know, building teams that can help us to be more competitive for larger grants. So it's part of the thing, the mission to be a more competitive research university. It is using the same amount of resources, and it is dividing it up in a little bit of a different way. But I think we'd like to our thinking anyway, is that it will accomplish some things that weren't clearly designated before. Jim.
Going back, and just following basically Owen and John Mann's question, are there issues that came up under the old structure that could come up now? And the one I'm thinking of, and I don't know if it's going to be an issue and how you'll deal with it. Right now, the academic deans are responsible for the faculty, which handles undergraduate teaching, graduate teaching, the research, and to the graduate school and the deans, they all report to the provost. So there's a connection there. Does this break that connection? Because now the deans report to the provost, yet graduate and research is all now to someone who the deans don't report to. Has that been a problem? Do you foresee it as an issue?
That's a good point. I'm not sure historically if that was one of the issues. And John's checking his email back there, so apparently he's not, I don't think he can help us with it.
I have something to say about that too.
But it's a good point. I hadn't actually really thought of it in those terms, because, yeah, the current structure, the dean reports to me, and we update with him every week. I mean, there is the fact that also, and Carol reports to me, and we, update weekly or so. But I will put some thought on that. I hadn't really thought about that as a potential downside. Did you ever?
Well, I think I'm not that familiar with the past structure between the VPR's office and the provost's office. I mean, what kind of relationship they had. But in this position and Jeff's position, we're working as a team. So we see each other all the time. We're a couple of doors down from each other, and we really are interacting quite a bit. We have formal updates about once a week, but I think that working together as a team, with Janet and with Jeff St. John, and I don't think that will be a big issue, but that's something to keep in mind.
Dan. Dan, make a comment. You ran out the door.
Smart man.
Gotcha.
Just building off of that conversation, it seems like oftentimes in managing a graduate program, it's very confusing about where the strategic planning comes in, how much is done through the college and how much is done through the grad school. And in my experience, the grad school has been seeming more like management, but not strategy. And the college and the graduate school are not really talking. It doesn't seem like there's good communication that way. And it seems like it could get worse with this kind of...
No, I think that's a good point.
Just to bridge off that, it's another mixed mission where putting the graduate school under the research sends a message that there's going to be more cohesing of those missions, but then the green pulls in a new consideration so that the associate dean is now balancing bringing research and graduate education together more strongly and getting pressure from enrollment management. It's kind of it just seems to be more.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and this is still in the concept stage, but the green box, the Director of Graduate Enrollment Management, that'll be funded through the VP for Enrollment Management, the focus of that person really is on the professional programs, the ones where the admission funnel more closely resembles what an undergrad program would be like. So a very high percentage of the students that apply to the program are admitted if they're qualified.
Yeah.
That person has a dotted line relationship to me because the graduate school will continue to oversee all the applications to the research-based master's programs as well as the doctoral programs, which has an entirely different review process and a review. And so there's just a need to coordinate the function of that Director of Graduate Enrollment Management, whose focus will really just be on those professional programs with the overall application process in the graduate school.
But Doug, I think you bring up a good point, and it's something that we can work on as well. And if that's an issue or a concern, I think more discussion, more dialogue is really important. So,
yeah, I think quick. I was thinking it's a very good point about who's in charge and what is strategic planning, who's responsible for it. And I think your description was accurate. I mean, we pretty much left at the department level, some involved with the college, and the graduate school kind of just managed the affairs. We've been, I think, moving, drifting, or where it is, but sliding over to approach where the graduate school has been trying to do more initiating the programs, talking about that we've developed these professional science master's programs. The graduate schools have been supportive of that. I'm very interested in some of the areas of enrollment and where we had, I think my office had a hands-off approach. Given the emphasis on growing enrollment, there's less hands-off. So we're looking at, and in all likelihood, there will be more conversations coming out of the provost office writ large now, including Carol's shop, going out to units saying, hey, we see potential in this area. What would you need to develop this area? How could the University of Maine do this? Could we do it? What resources? And having those kind of conversations. And I think, as you know, that has not been the history. It's been kind of coming up from the units. But I think you'll see more of a shift to that. And whether this model helps or hurts, I'll have to think about it. But I think we're seeing that kind of shift. That.
I mean, I don't mean to be so parochial, but what happens to a program like English under this? I mean, we're clearly not in the seeming to me privileged side of research. We do scholarship, which is often treated as a hobby at this university. But now, is our admissions, is this going to go through the graduate enrollment management, which I think would be disastrous?
No, it would not.
No, it would be, I wouldn't anticipate a change. It would primarily be operated by Scott.
Some examples of programs that might fall under the Director of Graduate Enrollment Management would be social work, business, education programs, the non-thesis education programs. So those that are really geared to, it's a professional credential.
The MBA program, social work program, the education program, these professional master's programs that we've developed that are not highly enrolled currently. We're going to be looking at trying to develop. And actually, also the other thing that's gone on, and this again goes to Doug's thing a little bit, we've been developing certificate programs, looking at trying to bring in professionals who aren't interested in getting a degree, but are getting a certificate of specialization. We've developed, I don't know how many of these programs, several of them, but we haven't done anything with respect to marketing, and the enrollments show that. So part of that responsibility is to try to attract people toward.
Are these programs going to be taught by people who are current in research and scholarship? Or are these going to be taught by adjuncts too?
I don't think they'd be taught by adjuncts. The current makeup of them is not by adjunct faculty. I mean, there's some adjunct faculty involved, but they're not programs developed around that.
In terms of structure, I'm wondering, so the Dean of the grad school currently has an executive board. So that executive board will now report to Carol. Carol, but anyway. I shudder, but, and this associate vice president, is that person, where, is that person going to be in Stoddard? I'm curious about kind of logistical.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
No, we have to figure that out. But well, again,
Yeah.
I've never thought of them as being in Stoddard. Scott will be in Stoddard, dealing with the day-to-day. But it is a good question of where the associate vice president for research we may lose our coffee space in Alumni Hall. We have to. I mean, we want them to be in Alumni Hall. We want them to be part of the scheme, but we've got some space issues to figure out. But my thinking was, again, it would be an alumni too, working closely with Carol. Roberto?
Yes, following on Laura's question, Laura asked about the executive committee of the graduate school and about the leadership, and I would like to extend that to the graduate board. I mean, how do you foresee the leadership and the mission of the graduate board? And now probably the graduate board, I imagine the University Research Council, both two venues for faculty members to participate will both be under the same leadership, and how do you view the interactions and the different missions?
I would see them as separate boards, separate advising bodies for, one for the research side, one for the graduate school side. I don't see any reason to dismember and then form one body for my office as advisors. I think we can maintain the separate URC and the grad board.
So will there be parts of your current job that you're leaving behind if this does get combined?
So I think that if we can combine and if we can have an associate VPR, right? So some of the duties and some of the initiatives that I'd really like to start from the VPR's office, the responsibilities would go to the AVPR.
Carol spends a lot of time just drinking coffee.
She hasn't.
Very, very.
You won't need that coffee room once you get to work.
Dee.
Going back to the grant consultants or the grant developers, writers for the colleges. Did I hear correctly, two have been?
To start, yeah.
To start, yes.
To start, what about colleges that already have those positions, that have been funding them through our own? Are we going to be considered? I mean, we have this, and we, everybody knows it's difficult. We are cutting our budget to continue to support those positions. So if we already have one in place and it's kind of been a model for this, is that a private conversation? I mean, I don't know if it's being considered or not.
I don't think that if the College of Education would like to continue supporting a grant consultant for your college, that's fine. We are developing these grant consultants based on, well, the way I'd like to structure it is on agency. But since we're starting with just 2, I'd love to have 4 or 6 grant consultants. But with the 2, I'm not really sure where we'll start. Probably NSF is a major grant source for the university, so I would probably think NSF, maybe DOE, foundations would be a big one. So.
But we're not going to say no to a college of ed person who wants to work with a grant consultant, say, yo, you got one. That's what is that your concern?
Yeah, I just was looking for, possible funding. So seeing how no indirects come back, and, this would be, we have found value in the position, so I'm glad to see that you're pursuing it. You did mention, though, it's all about the initial part, the identification of, the support for writing, matching up faculty.
Yes.
That's great. Where we struggle now is in the compliance part, and who helps assist with closing out. Because more grants that come into your college, especially in a small college like ours, that just becomes additional administrative struggle for our administrative assistants. And without the indirects coming back into the college, it makes it very difficult to close the grants and to be compliant with the grants. And so I would say if you're going forward with your consultants, that you might want to consider that as well, seeing them from the beginning through to the end.
I actually think that they would have a separate focus. So it would be the front end of obtaining funding, and that would be putting more resources into ORSP, which I'm definitely in support of, depending on how the review goes, the NCORA review.
Let me use this opportunity to make a quick announcement. Tomorrow is April 1st, and this is not an April Fool's joke. Chancellor Page will be here tomorrow for an open forum from 10:30 to noon. And Minsky Hall, and I don't think it got announced as widely as it should have. So 10:30 to noon tomorrow, and Minsky Hall, the Chancellor will be here. Anyone want to ask a final question? Well, thank you very much for coming out and participating. This was very helpful.
Thank you.